I'm a man in my late 20s. Definitely too old for trick-or-treating, and not super into partying either. Last year, I invited two of my closest friends over to celebrate Halloween. We bought some candy, made some food, had some drinks, and put on old scary movies. We were sitting in my living room, chatting, and making fun of some goofy horror movie, when we heard a faint knock at the door. I live in an apartment complex, and get little to no trick-or-treaters during Halloween, so we didn't expect to have anyone come by that night. It was faint, so we figured it could have just been the sound of my neighbors walking around, or partying. But we paused the movie anyways, and sat quietly, listening in case the noise happened again. And it did. After a few moments of sitting in silence, we heard the knock again. This time louder. We stared at each other in confusion. It was about 10:30 at this time, so there was almost no chance a neighbor was still out trick-or-treating. Plus, my neighbors were all really reserved and quiet people who kept to themselves. I almost never interacted with them. My friend Jason got off the couch and slowly approached the door, trying not to make any noise. He carefully looked through the peephole. After a few seconds of silence, he returned to us. "Who was it?" I asked. And he responded, "No one was there." We were a bit uneasy hearing that, but laughed it off and made a few jokes. We rationalized that it was likely someone playing a prank on us. We decided to continue our movie and forgot about it. But only a few minutes later, we heard the knock again. This time even louder. Loud enough to hear it clearly over the TV. We all stared at each other, frozen in fear. With the TV still playing, I got up and slowly walked towards the door. I looked through the peephole, and just as Jason had said earlier, no one was there. I stupidly unlocked and opened the door, just a crack, and peeked out. No one was there. I opened the door fully and stepped out of my apartment. Both hallways were completely empty and silent. I returned to my friends, who were equally as spooked as I was. We continued the movie, and it appeared as though the knocking stopped. After the movie, it was getting pretty late, and my friends decided to head home for the night. As I was cleaning up, I heard the knock at the door again. This time, I was all alone. I figured maybe one of my friends had forgotten something, but when I looked through the peephole, no one was there. What's weird is that my apartment building requires a code to enter, so it couldn't have been random kids messing with me. Plus, my apartment door is located at the center of two long hallways, so if someone was messing with me, I would have seen or at least heard them make a run for it. I haven't experienced anything like that since. But with Halloween fast approaching, I'm scared at what might happen this time. This story happened a long time ago. I was around 12 years old at the time, but I remember thinking I was a bit too old to be trick-or-treating. My best friend, who was a year younger than me, really wanted to go, and I wasn't about to say no to a night of free candy. Since we were a bit older, our parents let us go, just the two of us, as long as we agreed to stay within our neighborhood. It was a cold night, so we had to wear some jackets over top of our costumes. Kinda lame, but better than freezing to death. Anyways, we headed out, pillowcases in hand, and began knocking at the door of any house with lights on. It went well at first, and our pillowcases filled quickly. We got lots of candy. It didn't take us long to finish going to all of the houses in our neighborhood. But us being kids and wanting more candy, we weren't satisfied. Against our parents' orders, we decided to quickly check out a neighborhood that was close by. It was a very wealthy neighborhood, so we figured we'd hit the jackpot there, and expected it to be pretty safe. Rich people usually give out the big chocolate bars, so we were excited. But we couldn't have been more wrong. We approached the first house, which wasn't decorated at all. We knocked at the door and eagerly waited for someone to answer. After a few seconds of waiting, we figured no one was home. We decided to go to the next house. But just as we turned to leave, the door opened. It was an older man, probably in his late 50s. "Trick or treat," we yelled excitedly. He smiled and told us that the candy was inside and that he had to go get it. He invited us in, saying that we could warm up while we waited. And us being naive kids, we agreed to his offer and stepped inside. The man closed the door behind us and left us standing there, disappearing into his house. After a few seconds of waiting, we heard the man call out to us. He told us that he had the candy and to come get it. My friend and I both looked at each other, definitely sharing the same feeling, that something was off. We both opened the door as quickly as we could and left his house. We were terrified. We didn't want to get in any trouble for leaving our neighborhood, so we both agreed to tell our parents nothing. A few months later, the man who lived in that house was arrested. We never found out why, but I can only imagine what would have happened to us if we had agreed to follow him. It was my first year in college at the time this story happened to me. It was Halloween night, and my friends were hoping to attend a party that night. I'm not much of a drinker, so I agreed to be the DD for my friends. They were planning on attending an open house. They had a ride there, but they just needed a ride home that night, so I didn't plan on showing up until later. The less social interactions, the better. Hanging around a bunch of drunk people wasn't exactly my idea of a fun night. At around 11 p.m., I texted my friends to let them know I was on my way. As I got into my car, one of my friends, Izzy, texted me saying, "Party got busted. There's another party happening here. Heading there now," followed by an address. It wasn't uncommon for open house parties to get busted by the cops, so I didn't think much of it. I added the address she sent to my Google Maps and started driving to the party. After around 15 minutes of driving, I arrived at the address. But the house looked empty. There were no lights on, no people in sight, nothing. I texted my friend again and told them I had arrived. She responded quickly, texting me that the party was happening in the basement of the home. I assumed that the host of the party wanted to keep it more low-key and decided to dedicate only the basement level to the party. I parked my car in the driveway, which only had one other car in it, and headed towards the front door. Just as I was about to enter, I got a text from one of my other friends. "Hey, are you almost here? Izzy lost her phone and is really drunk." My heart sank. If Izzy lost her phone, who was texting me? In that moment, I knew. Whoever had Izzy's phone was trying to lure me into that basement. Instantly, I turned around and booked it to my car. I got in, started it as quickly as possible, and drove out of there. My heart was racing. I made it to the real party, which was still going on, and felt a bit better knowing there were people around. My friends and I had made it home safe, but Izzy never got her phone back. That night still haunts me to this day. I feel so lucky that my friend texted me at the time they did. Who knows what would have happened if I had entered that basement.